Um, now Boaz has gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz and had spoken came by. So Boaz said, "Turn aside, friend. Sit down there, here." Oh, today our scriptures reading from for sorry. Anyway. And they turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders from the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, but in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people, if you will redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know. For there is no one besides you to redeem it, and I come after you. And he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. Then the Redeemer said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair, impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption, redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging, to confirm a transaction. The one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other. And this was the manner of a setting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, he drew off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses this day that I bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilton and Mahlon. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day. Then all people who were at the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the horse of Israel. May you act worthily in Ariatha and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, who has not left will this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He, he shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez father Hur, Hezron, Hezron father Ram, grandfather Aminadab, Aminadab father Nashon, Nashon father Salmon, Salmon father Boaz, Boaz father Obed, Obed father Jesse, and Jesse's father David. This is the word of God. Sorry.
Thank you, Danny. I know whenever you get the genealogies at the end, it could be very difficult. Even for myself, I'm in seminary and I'm learning all these Hebrew and Greek names, and yeah, even then, it's quite a challenge. Um, yeah, nonetheless, it's good to see everybody here. I didn't expect so many more adults than usual. Usually, my audience from our crowd is mostly all youth students. So, um, please stay tight and just know this was originally more catered toward the youth. But I hope nonetheless God's word could be spoken to us all. So, with that, a question for us is this: um, Have you ever been picked to be part of something that you didn't deserve to be part of? Have you ever been picked to be part of something that you really didn't have anything to offer? I remember when I was in high school, our church wanted to start a praise team. And our pastor had a vision to disciple and raise students through the praise team and give an opportunity for those who wanted to use their skills, use their talents that God had given to honor him in our ministry. So the invitation was sent out, and a bunch of us were asked to sign up and try out. And at that time, I was 15, and I barely knew how to strum. I barely knew how to play any chords, and my voice was cracking more than even today. And I was really nervous. And I thought to myself, what can I really offer the praise team? I can't really play the guitar, and I can't really sing very well. I get nervous, and I'm so uncertain on stage. Like, are they really going to let me join? And despite that, I remember a lot of people encouraged me, like, it's not about that. Why don't you try signing up? So I was like, why not? And long story short, before I knew it, I was given the privilege to be part of the praise team. And looking back, I still had those thoughts of, like, shouldn't I have been the best guitarist? Like, didn't I have to be like a really good singer or the most charismatic on stage or the best leader? I mean, if you go to these more established churches, right, a lot of times being proficient and experienced is kind of a requirement, right? It's kind of what they look for. And to be honest, I didn't know, why was I allowed to join? Why did they let me? And after years, I found out, the church simply wanted to give us opportunity. They knew most of us in the youth group didn't really have skills or talents to be built up. Um, it was not really built up yet. And at the end of the day, they could have chosen to continue to ask any teachers or staffs or more experienced and skillful people to lead the worship. They didn't have to allow us. And despite that, they were willing. And today we come to a similar situation where we left off 2 weeks ago in Ruth chapter 3. Ruth, she was looking for Boaz to redeem her from her situation. Yet Boaz had just told Ruth, there's another kinsman around that might be able to help you. Let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, then as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. And after that, Ruth had told Naomi all that had happened, and in uncertainty of the whole situation, they decided to wait. And with that, we come to the conclusion of our 4 week series on Ruth. And today, we're going to continue to dive into the story to see how God is our one true Redeemer kinsman. Now, we get to the next day where Boaz has set up a meeting with the elders of the city, right? And the potential kinsman who could save Naomi and Ruth from their situation is there. Remember, it was Israel's custom back in the day. If a husband died and left behind a wife or land or children, the nearest relative or kinsman were allowed to marry the widow, possess the land, and protect the children. And here, right, there is somebody else that has priority over Boaz. Being closer in the relative scale, right? They're closer in blood to Naomi to become the family kinsman. So accordingly, Boaz tells the other kin, here mentioned as friend, Naomi has not come, or Naomi has come to sell the land, which belonged to her late husband Elimelech. And this isn't just a small ordeal because a group of elders are there. A group of elders are there, to properly observe this transaction. Boaz tells the other kinsmen, if you redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me because I'm the one next in line. So normally, we get to see this as a very good deal for the kinsman. Right? He gets to take land. He gets to possess the land and take care of Naomi, who at this point, she's too old for childbearing. Right? If I were this kinsman, I would be thrilled at this idea. I get to get a bunch of land, for this good deal. That means a lot of wealth and prosperity on my end, or I could sell it or keep it or whatever, right? And even if Naomi is in the picture, she's gonna be more of this grandmother figure, right? She's more of a grandma at this point. She's not really high maintenance. She's just there, and we gotta protect her. Yet, we know that this isn't the full picture, because the deal isn't just possessing the land. The deal is not even taking up Naomi, but Ruth. She's also part of the package. Boaz tells the kinsman, when you buy the land from Naomi, Ruth will also join you, right? And guess what? She's young enough where, when you marry her, right, she still has the ability to childbear. Not only that, but she's a widow, and she's a Moabite. She's different, right? She's from a different region. This past fall, I watched a Korean drama on Netflix called Startup. I don't know if you guys watch Startup in here, but I watched this Korean drama called Startup featuring Suzy and Kim Seo. And this drama mainly focuses on this group of friends who are trying to build up this tech company from scratch. And they don't really have any money or connections, or they don't have anything. In this drama, you see them go through all sorts of experiences to grow and learn more about what does it mean to start up this business, right? What does it mean to, start up a company? And we get to this moment 2/3 throughout the series. This guy named Alex, he's one of the top tech companies, CEOs from Silicon Valley. He approaches the main character, right, and the leader of the startup group named Tosam, right? And Alex, the CEO, offers Tosam to leave his friends to start this, to leave the startup company and to come join him in Silicon Valley and work for him. Alex will offer him a great deal, right? He said he'll pay a lot. There's going to be a lot of connections for him in the future. All things will work out. You're pretty much set when you're going into this company. It's pretty much the greatest news and deal for anybody that's looking to be scouted in tech. Yet, despite that, Tosam being the K-drama protagonist, they never go with the right answer. They never go with the easy answer. He says, I want to take the whole company. I want to take the whole company with me. And although Alex really wants Tosam to join him, he takes a step back and he tells Tosam to reconsider the offer. Now, in this situation, I would honestly relate to Alex. Look, I'm a huge CEO of one of the greatest and biggest tech companies in the United States. I gave you a good deal, but I can't just take all of you. That's just not worth it on my end. I've gone up to this much, yet that's really all I can do. And you see the kinsman being offered to take Naomi and the land is kind of in a similar situation here, right? He can't just redeem it for himself, otherwise, it's going to hurt his own inheritance. In other words, it's going to cost him too much. And frankly speaking, I totally get it. I understand what this kinsman and what Alex may be feeling. Why would you make that deal, right? Why would you take up Ruth, right? She's a foreigner. She's a widow. I mean, there's barely any significance in that, any worth in taking her at all. Yet, despite that, Boaz does. Boaz does. For Boaz had promised Ruth earlier, right? He told her that he was willing. Boaz said he was willing. He had promised he would do everything he can to deliver Ruth from her tragic situation. And to this point, Boaz had kept his every word. He's kept every promise. He's done everything that he can. And with that, he declares to all the elders and the people around that he will buy the land of Naomi and take up Ruth, the Moabite, the widow, as his wife. Now, if you look closely at the elders and the witnesses, right? Like you see this imagery where Boaz is declaring this thing. He's declaring that he'll take up Naomi, and if you really look closely into these words, right, the way that Boaz is talking, you see this imagery that it's a ceremony that's about to take place. In other words, it's a wedding. It's a wedding between Boaz and Ruth. And after that, Ruth and Naomi, after all that they've gone through, we finally come to see a grand ceremony, a grand wedding where Ruth and Naomi is going to be redeemed through this wedding, right, with Boaz. And here it's a beautiful picture, it's a beautiful illustration where they're finally cheered for. Ruth is blessed, right, as they compare her to Rachel and Leah, who were mothers, and together built the house of Israel. They had 13 children together. Oh my goodness, imagine that. But, nonetheless, those, right, Naomi and Ruth, who were childrenless, who had no offsprings, now they're being compared to these type of figures in the Bible. Also, they're being blessed like the house of Perez, who are supposed to carry out the lineage of Judah. And all in all, Boaz becomes Ruth's redeemer kinsman through his willingness to marry her. And not only that, but in the distant future, we will see Boaz took Ruth as his wife and bore a son. Then she told Naomi, who was once bitter and hopeless, she told Naomi, who was in this tragic and dark situation, this beautiful message. It's being spoken to her by this woman that she talked to earlier. Blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a redeemer. May his name be renewed in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child, she laid it on her lap, and became his nurse. In this way, Boaz has finally become not only Ruth's redeemer kinsman, but he gets to become Naomi's redeemer as well, finally fulfilling her very thing, her very desire since the beginning. What she has lost. She lost her husband and her children. She's gone through it all. And although she's been very bitter and upset and hopeless to see anything good of God this whole time, we see that God has been faithful to her, finally providing her the very thing that she wanted, the very thing that will give her the sense of life once again, a son. And it is through her daughter-in-law, Ruth, who in the beginning had really no connection to her, who is a Moabite, a foreigner, who is a daughter-in-law, not even her own daughter. And through that, and through Boaz, in this situation, we see a son being given to her, and she gets to hold him. Now, after all of this, we could merely decide to see it as a love story between Boaz and Ruth. We can merely decide to see it as how things just worked out for Ruth. But when we take a step back, we could see God's overarching providence and grace through every situation. Right? We could see that although it may have looked like a coincidence, the story is written and orchestrated in a way for us to see how God is our one true Redeemer kinsman in our deepest and darkest of situations. I'm not sure completely to what degree, but I'm confident that I could say that this year has been very difficult for us all. Not even just here at church, but all throughout New England, America, and the rest of the world. We've been struggling. We've been struggling right now due to the coronavirus, and I'm sure there's a lot of other effects that have come out, and many things happening in the media, even this past year. I'm sure for a lot of us here, we may be feeling hopeless, defeated, and just bitter at life. At these moments, it might be difficult to see God. It might be difficult to acknowledge how He's working in our everyday lives. He may feel silent. He may feel too quiet in the mundane. But trust and know, just like in the book that we just read today, that God is working the bigger picture. God is our one true kinsman redeemer who has saved us and given us new meaning and new significance. And how do we know this? Because at the end of the book, it doesn't end with Ruth and Boaz getting married or Naomi holding her grandson. It doesn't end there. Actually, it ends with the genealogies. And it's not just any genealogies, but it's the genealogies of David. And it says that these are the generations, starting from Perez, who was mentioned before to carry out the lineage of Judah, to Hezron. To Hezron followed Ram. Ram fathered Elimelech, to Nashon, and to Salmon, and to Boaz, our very own Boaz, who fathered baby Obed, who will come to become the father of Jesse, and we know Jesse fathered David. And this David is the same David that we know, the small boy who will grow up to become the king of Israel. And through that, and through the Davidic covenant and the promise that God has made, our heir will come through David. And as we celebrated 3 days ago, the Son of Man will be born into our world as the good news and the true Redeemer kinsman himself, Jesus Christ. And although Jesus, our one true Redeemer kinsman, although we don't have anything to offer him or give him, we don't really deserve anything when we talk about Jesus, in light of Jesus. Actually, what we do deserve is all the condemnation and death, right? Because we've been like Naomi, who has been bitter against God, because we're the ones that have been all these, like Israel in this time, that's constantly done things right in our eyes. We've been the ones that have constantly turned ourselves away from God. We're not Ruth or we're not Boaz in this story. We're Israel. And Israel in this time has been struggling and disobedient and sinful. Yet despite all that, despite all our sins, Christ has placed us into God's family. And through his grand ceremony, through the grand ceremony that we get to have with Jesus Christ, we get to enter God's family forever. And just like Boaz, who bought Naomi's land despite the cost, Jesus Christ himself will also buy us. He's also paying the greatest price of all with his very own life. And it's through this, right? It's through all of this, right? It's through this worthy, totally significant, precious Redeemer who really didn't deserve to give up anything. He laid his life down to purchase the life of us undeserving, unworthy, and sinful, just sinners. And we got to understand, just like Boaz, Jesus, this is because he's willing, and because he loves us, right? It's because he's willing to give up his life, and it's because he loves us at the end of the day. And he loves us so much that he would pay that unfair price. He would make that incredibly unfair exchange for us. Right? We're Ruth, we're the foreigners, we're the Moabite, we're the ones that have nothing to offer him. Actually, the ones that are originally part of this idol worshiping community, yet, it's because of God's love for us that we get to enter his family. And it's through that he becomes our one true Redeemer kinsman. And even in the darkest and hopeless of situations, when we fail to see Him, may we know that God is there, that God is our one true kinsman redeemer. And He's right now redeeming us as we speak. And He will continue to redeem us. And He has redeemed us on that cross. So, with that, I just want to give us some applications, just 3 applications to share as we just conclude our message for today. And number 1 is this: see how God is working. See how God is working. I'm sure for a lot of us, it might be hard to see how God is working at this moment. Especially, it's been such a dark and difficult year. Especially being at home, being in the mundane, just being in your home alone, in your office, in your school, whatever it may be hard to see that God's working. But don't let that stop you. Continue to read in between the lines of your life. Continue to be sensitive to how God might be working in this situation. Because just like the story of Ruth, we may not even see God's presence. But when we get to really delve into every situation, the characters, and we see the overarching message and overarching story, we see that God has been providential all throughout. And right now, He's redeeming us as well. Now, see how God is working. Secondly, follow the Redeemer kinsman. Follow the Redeemer kinsman. Like mentioned earlier, a lot of times we don't want to take that extra step. I know I don't. A lot of times I want to be like the other kid. That's like, I'm not sure. That's kind of like a bad deal for me. I don't know if I want to really take up Ruth. We don't want to be like Boaz. And to a degree, I understand that's fair. But when we make those sacrifices, when we do take that step of faith like Boaz, we start to become that much closer to Christ. And I know the easier thing is just to take this story, nod, and go home. But we too must follow the Redeemer kinsman and become these mini redeemers of this world as God's agents. Follow the Redeemer kinsman. And thirdly, bless the Lord. Near the end of the story that we read together, we saw how the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, because He hasn't left her and provided for her the very thing that fulfilled her, a son." In the same way, we too have been given not just any son, but we've been given Jesus Christ, the one and only Son. And we know what He has already done for us. And we know how much He loves us and cares for us. And we know that He's been our Redeemer kinsman. So us too, may we bless the Lord. Let's bless the Lord as well for who He is and what He has done. So with that, I just want to encourage us today. Bless the Lord, because we know that He is our one true Redeemer kinsman. Let us pray.